Hello everyone. Today I will tell you a story. The story is titled, Boy in the Perfectly Fitting Space. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you appreciate me. You can skip this if you don't and oppose. Like this video. Thank you very much. The story begins as follows. Boy was not a big dog. He wasn't tiny either. He was the kind of dog people often described with a shrug and a smile, saying, he's just normal-sized. But Boy had a talent that had nothing to do with size. He had an extraordinary sense of choosing exactly the right space to exist in. Every morning, before the day fully woke up, Boy would stretch on the floor with a long, dramatic sigh, as if he had worked very hard all night guarding the house from invisible dangers. Then he would walk slowly toward the kitchen, not rushing, not demanding. He never barked to be fed. He simply sat a little behind his bowl, leaving a polite gap, his tail softly sweeping the floor like a quiet metronome. That gap was Boy's first space of the day. If you stepped too close, he would move back just a little. Not because he was afraid, but because he liked that distance. It was enough for him to feel seen, yet free. Enough to be close, but not crowded. When the food arrived, his eyes lit up, but he never crossed the invisible line until you stepped away. Throughout the house, Boy collected spaces the way some dogs collected toys. Under the dining table, he chose a spot where your feet could reach him, but not accidentally kick him. On the couch, he never sat in the middle. He preferred the edge, where his body touched your leg lightly, reminding you he was there without demanding your attention. When guests came over, Boy greeted them with one sniff, one wag, and then retreated to a corner where he could watch everything happen. He didn't hide. He simply observed. People often said, he's so well-behaved, but that wasn't the whole truth. Boy wasn't behaving. He was simply comfortable. And comfort, he believed, came from finding a space that fit. At night, when the house grew quiet, Boy followed you into the bedroom. He didn't jump onto the bed right away. Instead, he waited, watching where you lay, how you turned, how the blanket fell. Only then did he circle once, twice, and settle at your feet, curling himself into a small, warm comma at the end of your day. That space, close enough to share warmth, far enough to respect sleep, was perfect. Boy never tried to take more space than he needed, and somehow, that made his presence feel larger. There were days when the house felt different. You came home later than usual. Your footsteps were heavier. Your bag hit the floor with a dull sound, and your shoulders stayed tense even after you sat down. Boy noticed everything. He always did. On those days, Boy didn't choose his usual spots. Instead of lying under the table, he sat beside you on the floor, not touching, but close enough that you could feel his warmth through the air. He didn't look at you directly. He stared forward, as if saying, I'm here. We don't have to talk. Once, when you sat on the couch staring at nothing, Boy climbed up and placed just his head on your knee. He didn't move. He didn't wag. His head was heavier than usual, or maybe you were just more aware of it. The space between you felt smaller then. There was a time when the house grew louder with worry. Phone calls lasted too long. Silence came too suddenly. You paced, stood still, sat down, stood up again. Boy followed you from room to room, always keeping the same distance. One step behind, never ahead, never pulling. He matched your rhythm like a shadow with a heartbeat. At night, instead of sleeping at your feet, Boy lay beside the bed, his chin resting on the edge of the mattress. If you reached down, your fingers would brush his ears. If you didn't, he stayed anyway. The house still had the same walls, the same furniture, the same light. But something invisible had shifted. The space felt too empty, even when you were inside it. And Boy responded the only way he knew how, by adjusting himself to fit the emptiness. He didn't try to fix your sadness. He didn't distract you with tricks or toys. He simply made sure that wherever you were, the space around you was no longer hollow. In those moments, Boy taught something important without words. Sometimes, love isn't about filling space with noise or advice. Sometimes, it's about quietly shrinking the distance so no one feels alone inside it. Over time, you began to notice Boy differently. You realized how often you adjusted your own space because of him. You walked more carefully at night so you wouldn't step on his sleeping body. You left a corner of the couch empty, even when you were tired, because you knew Boy liked it. You opened doors wider, moved chairs slightly, and placed bowls exactly where he preferred them. Without realizing it, you were learning his language. And Boy, in return, learned yours. He knew when you needed silence and when you needed laughter. On good days, he bounced closer, tail spinning like a small celebration. On quiet days, he stayed near, but still, as if guarding your thoughts. The house slowly changed, not in appearance, but in feeling. It became a place where space was shared, not claimed, where presence mattered more than control, where love didn't shout, but waited patiently. One afternoon, sunlight spilled across the floor, and Boy lay right in the middle of it. For once, he didn't choose the edge. He stretched out fully, paws wide, belly exposed. You sat beside him, and there was no careful measuring of distance. The space fit both of you. In that moment, you understood something simple and true. A home isn't made by walls or furniture. It's made by the quiet agreements between those who live inside it. Agreements about respect, patience, and knowing when to step closer or when to give room. Boy yawned, rolled onto his side, and looked at you with soft eyes. Not asking for anything, just sharing the moment. And somehow that was enough. Boy and his perfectly fitting spaces remind us of something deeply important in modern life. Not everything needs to be loud, fast, or overflowing to be meaningful. In a world where people constantly compete for attention, space, and recognition, Boy shows us the beauty of knowing where we belong and staying there with kindness. From Boy, we learn that healthy relationships, whether between humans or between humans and animals, are built on mutual respect. He never invades space, yet he is always present. He teaches us that being there for someone doesn't mean fixing their problems or filling every silence. Sometimes, the greatest comfort is simply staying close enough to be felt. In our daily lives, we can apply this by learning to listen more and speak less, by respecting emotional boundaries, and by offering support without pressure. Like Boy, we can learn to adjust ourselves gently to the needs of others, instead of forcing them to adapt to us. Most importantly, Boy reminds us that animals are not just companions, they are teachers. Through their quiet loyalty and intuitive love, they guide us toward a more compassionate, balanced way of living. When humans learn to share space with animals thoughtfully, the world becomes softer, warmer, and far more humane.